Again, this is one of those British helmets where collectors and dealers have threw up a myth about this helmet over the years, which is still argued about to this day because there's no proof that it was actually issued to the people I'm about to mention. This is, in spite of the colour, a black plastic / bakelite home front helmet. It's patterned on the standard Ww2 Tommy helmet with a similar liner, similar chin strap, but the actual shell is made of black fibre plastic. The myth that's grown up about this helmet is that it was issued to ordnance factory people where they're making ammunition, because if they wore a steel helmet, the steel helmet could fall off the head, create a spark and ignite ammunition. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that anything like that happened, and the myth is that these helmets were introduced specifically for ordnance factory workers, which is complete garbage because there's no evidence. These plastic helmets were actually introduced for commercial sale. At one point, steel helmets were in such short supply after Dunkirk that before Dunkirk, anybody could buy a steel helmet. You know, there's lots of commercially available steel helmets at the time. But following Dunkirk, all the existing steel helmets were needed to rebuild the British Army. So enterprising people turned their attention to making plastic versions of the steel helmet for commercial sales. And basically it's all about companies that kind of fill the gap. So this is kind of called, for argument's sake, a World War II British plastic / bakelite home front helmet. Now, after the fall of Dunkirk, steel helmets were in short supply, and whatever was available was given priority to the rebuilding of the army. This led to a few manufacturers turning production over to making non-metal helmets, which could be bought privately. These helmets, allegedly, were provided to factory workers where they would require some protection from falling debris, but non-metallic, so they could not create a spark leading to an explosion. That is the myth. It's also suggested that it was issued to some home front civil defence organisations that had to go into bomb buildings where electricity could conduct through a steel helmet. Again, that's probably a myth as well. I mean, all this is some enterprising people, such as Plasfort and a few other dealers, kind of filling a gap at the time. Now, these helmets were advertised for commercial sale in newspapers at 12 shillings 6pence each, plus a shilling postage. Now, this meant that anybody could have one of these helmets, from children to home front organisations. Even milkmen wore these helmets. So basically, any civilian who would have pre-Dunkirk bought a steel helmet for their own use, after Dunkirk, they would have bought these helmets for their own use. Originally, it was moulded in black plastic, and then when it went out to the organisations, they painted it and stenciled it for their own use. This one is a warden. I think it's a chief warden in this colour scheme. So this is a plastic / bakelite home front helmet. Not an ordnance factory workers helmet. There's absolutely no proof that ordnance factory workers actually wore this helmet. There's no proof that it was introduced so that it wouldn't create sparks where a normal steel helmet would. That's pure fantasy created by dealers and collectors. Inside, you'll see that it's got a liner similar to the Tommy helmet liner. The fibre strips that come down, there's no date on it. There's a size 7 stamped in there. You're not going to be able to see it. It's got similar mounts. The same elasticated chin strap as a British Mark II helmet. But yeah, you see how crude it's been moulded in a press. It's just a simple pressing for commercial sale. You see how kind of thick that is around there. So yeah, it's got a little screw in there. Sometimes I took the screw out and put a split pin through it. But yeah, no proof at all that these are non-metallic helmets for ordnance factory workers. It's just a simple home front helmet that some enterprising companies so fit to plug a gap when regular steel helmets were turned over to the British Army. So civilians and shopkeepers, etc., needed the helmet to buy, so these plastic helmets were introduced. They're not very rare because different manufacturers made them. You could find one with the trade name Plasfort inside. You could find one with absolutely no trade name inside. So don't believe the hype when people say these are Ordnance Factory Workers helmets made so that they wouldn't create a spark leading to an explosion. That is total garbage. It's just simply something that enterprising businesses went over to making when the British Army needed steel helmets after Dunkirk and the civilians needed some kind of head protection. So they introduced, for a short while, these plastic helmets. And of course the fantasy of it being an Ordnance Factory Workers helmet. I mean, some may have gone to the Ordnance Factories, but there's no proof that's what they were actually made for with the intention. So yeah, so again, it's just some kind of thing that dealers add onto it in order to sell the item to make it more fancy than it is. It's like anything that's 1940 dated, you put Battle of Britain on it and it sells. You know, anything that's 1944 dated, you put D-Day on it and it sells better. Well, it's the same with these things. So that's what that one is. A Plasfort or other companies black plastic / bakelite home front helmet, available for commercial sale, 12 shilling and 6pence each, plus a shilling postage. Bye for now.